This is my true story. I worked my whole life to give my son everything: a home, an education, a future. I thought he'd take care of me when I grew old. Instead, he told everyone I was losing my mind. Friends stopped visiting. Family stopped calling. He made me doubt myself. Until one night I saw the truth. I set up a small camera in my living room, and what I recorded changed everything. My hands still shake remembering it. But before I show you what I captured, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And please subscribe so my story can reach more people. It started small. My son told the neighbors I was forgetting things. He said I left the stove on. He said I lost my keys. He said I called him twice in 1 hour, asking the same question. People laughed at first. They said it happens with age. But then he kept talking. He told my doctor I was confused. He told my pastor I was unstable. He told the grocery clerk that I wandered off and got lost. Every person I knew started to look at me like I was breaking apart. I could feel their eyes follow me when I walked down the street. They smiled, but it wasn't kindness. It was pity. They thought I was fading. They thought I was going soft in the head. My own son had said it enough times that even I started to wonder if it was true. I tried to prove I was fine. I wrote lists. I double-checked everything. I spoke slowly so no one could say I forgot my words. But nothing helped. The whispers were louder than any truth I tried to show. When I went to the bank, the teller asked if I wanted to bring my son to help me manage things. When I went to the pharmacy, the girl behind the counter offered to call him to make sure I was taking my medicine. Every small act of help felt like a knife. My son had made me a story people liked to repeat. The poor old man who was losing his mind. At home, I started watching him. He would shake his head when I asked a question, like I was a burden. He told me not to worry about small things. He said my memory was not what it used to be. I could see the fake concern in his face. He said he loved me, but it felt like a trap. He said he was protecting me, but it sounded like control. I wanted to shout, to tell him I wasn't crazy, but he always stayed calm. The calmer he was, the more foolish I looked. That was his power. My own son knew how to make me doubt myself. Days turned into weeks, and soon the story spread beyond the street. My friends stopped calling as much. Some avoided me completely. They said they didn't want to confuse me. I wasn't confused. I was angry. Angry that my son had turned my life into a rumor. Angry that people believed him so easily. Angry that I had raised a man who could make his father feel small in his own house. I sat at my kitchen table one morning, staring at the same cup of coffee for an hour, thinking about everything he had said. Losing his mind. The words echoed in my head, over and over. I started to ask myself, what if he was right? What if I was slipping away and just didn't know it? That doubt was the worst part. It ate at me. Every small mistake became proof. Every misplaced paper, every forgotten appointment, every late bill. It all became evidence that maybe I was losing control. I started writing things down. I labeled my drawers. I left notes on the fridge. I told myself it was to stay organized, but deep down, it was because I was scared. Scared that my son's story was becoming real. Scared that my own mind was turning against me. But a small part of me, the part that had seen life, loss, and lies, whispered something different. It told me that he was playing a game, that he was building something behind the curtain of pity, that there was a reason he wanted people to think I was broken. Every time I looked at him, I saw a smile that didn't reach his eyes, a smile that said he was winning. He wanted to make me helpless. He wanted me to depend on him. Maybe for power, maybe for money, maybe just to feed his pride. But I wasn't ready to give up. I didn't know how yet, but I knew one thing. The old man they thought was losing his mind was still watching. And sooner or later, someone who watches long enough learns the truth about everyone, even their own son. It began with small changes. My son said he would take care of the bills. He said it was safer that way. He said I shouldn't worry about forgetting to pay something. I didn't argue. I thought maybe he was trying to help. He took my checkbook. He asked for my bank card. He said he would handle everything online because paper is outdated. I trusted him. He was my son. I believed he would protect me, not use me. I didn't know I was handing over my freedom, piece by piece, like loose change slipping through my fingers. He started coming around with folders and envelopes. He said it was all sorted, that I didn't need to check. He smiled every time I asked to see the numbers. "Don't stress, Dad," he said. "You've done enough your whole life." Those words sounded kind, but they were walls. Every time he said them, I felt smaller. I didn't see my accounts anymore. I didn't hold my own money. I didn't sign my own checks. He said he was protecting me from mistakes, but I started to feel like I didn't exist in my own life. I was just an old man in a chair while my son ran the show. I noticed little things missing. A few dollars here, a bill that looked higher than usual. When I asked, he'd laugh and call it a glitch. He said the system made small errors all the time. He said I shouldn't worry about numbers I didn't understand. I used to manage every cent when I worked. I knew numbers. I wasn't stupid. But he said it with such confidence that I doubted myself again. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was forgetting. Maybe I was the problem. That's what he wanted me to think. The more he controlled, the less I questioned. The less I questioned, the more he took. He started locking his phone when he visited. I'd hear him whispering in the kitchen, talking about transfers and deadlines. He said it was work. I wanted to believe that. But my gut told me otherwise. Something in his tone, something in the way he looked at me after each call. It didn't feel like a son talking to his father. It felt like a man managing a client he didn't respect. He'd pat my shoulder and say, "Everything's fine, old man." That word, old, cut deep. I had fought through wars, storms, sickness, and loss. I had built a home, raised him, taught him everything he knew. And now I was old man. Nothing more. Each month I asked for the bank statements. He said they were online. He said the passwords were too complicated. He said he'd show me later. Later never came. My savings got smaller. My questions got shorter. He made it sound like I was lucky he was around to help. But help shouldn't make you feel helpless. I could see it now. He wasn't helping. He was taking control, slowly, carefully, like a thief who knew how to smile. At night, I sat in my chair thinking about my wife. She would have seen through him in a heartbeat. She always said, "Trust, but keep your eyes open." I had trusted too much. I had kept my eyes closed because I wanted to believe my son was good. I thought maybe it was my fault. Maybe I hadn't raised him right. Maybe I made him too comfortable with my kindness. But the truth was sharper than that. He wasn't helping me because I was weak. He was helping himself because I trusted him. And I started to understand that the lies he told weren't just to others. They were to me too. He wanted me quiet. He wanted me unsure. Because doubt was his best weapon. He could steal from me right in front of my face and still make me think I was imagining it. That was his game. Control the story, and you control the man. It happened slowly, like a curtain closing 1 inch at a time. My friends stopped visiting. At first they said they were busy. Then they stopped calling altogether. The neighbors waved from a distance, but didn't come by for coffee anymore. I didn't understand why. I thought maybe I had said something wrong, forgotten something important. Then one day, I overheard my son on the phone. He was talking to one of my old friends. He said I didn't recognize people anymore. He said I got angry for no reason. He said it was best to give me space. I sat there in the next room, listening to him erase my life with calm words. That's how isolation begins, not with chains or locks, but with whispers that make people turn away. After that, the house grew quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy. I'd sit by the window waiting to see familiar faces, but no one came. No letters, no calls, no visits. Even the mailman stopped chatting. I saw pity in everyone's eyes when they passed by. They believed him. Why wouldn't they? He was young, clean, confident. I was old, tired, and unsure. He made me look fragile, and people treat fragile things by keeping them at a distance. It broke something inside me. The world I had built, my friends, my respect, my place in the community, it all started to vanish. All because of my own son's story. He'd visit every day now, acting like a caretaker. He'd check my pills, my fridge, my mail. He'd sigh when I asked questions, as if I was wasting his time. He'd say, "Dad, you're overthinking again," whenever I doubted him. I began to shrink inside myself. I stopped asking. I stopped talking. When you're told often enough that your mind is slipping, silence starts to feel safer than speaking. I wrote notes to myself, trying to hold on to my sense of truth. What day it was, what I ate, what time he came by. It was my way of fighting back against the fog he was trying to build around me. But even those notes began to feel pointless. He had everyone believing I was confused. It didn't matter what I knew if no one believed me. Some nights, I'd sit in the dark and wonder if maybe he was right. Maybe I really was losing my mind. The worst part wasn't the doubt, it was the loneliness that came with it. The quiet was unbearable. I missed hearing laughter in the house. I missed being trusted, being listened to. Now, every sound, the ticking clock, the refrigerator hum, felt louder because there was nothing else left. The house that once felt alive now felt like a waiting room for a man everyone thought was already gone. He controlled everything, my money, my reputation, even my voice. And yet, he acted like a hero. He told people he was sacrificing his time for me. He painted himself as the devoted son caring for a broken father, and people praised him for it. I saw their comments online. "Such a good man," they said. "So patient with his dad." They didn't see what I saw. They didn't see the cold look in his eyes when no one else was watching. They didn't hear the way his voice changed, low, sharp, cutting, when he told me to stay out of his way. It was like he wanted me invisible, easier to control that way. I began to forget what it felt like to be believed. I started questioning every memory. Did I pay that bill? Did I say that thing? Did I forget that appointment? The doubt ate through me. It was like being alive but erased. I wasn't the father anymore. I was a story he told to others, a story about weakness, confusion, and age. And the more they believed it, the less I existed. That was his real theft, not just the money. He stole my name, my pride, my place in the world. And I sat there, day after day, watching the walls close in, wondering if I'd ever be seen as myself again. It was a quiet evening when it happened. I was sitting at the table, counting the few bills I had left in my wallet. I had been careful that week. I knew exactly how much money I kept. I had written it down on a slip of paper and placed it under the wallet, like proof for myself. But when I opened it, the money was gone again. Not all of it, just enough to make me question my memory. I felt my stomach turn. I knew I hadn't spent it. I hadn't gone anywhere. The house was the same, untouched, except for that empty space where the bills should have been. I stared at that wallet for a long time. My hands shook, but not from age, from anger, a kind of anger that felt clear, clean, and sharp. I looked around the room and saw everything differently. The walls weren't just walls anymore. They were witnesses. The table, the chair, the floor. They had all seen what I hadn't wanted to see. My son had been stealing from me, and I had been letting him. He told me I was confused. He made me doubt my eyes, my memory, my own mind. But this time, the evidence wasn't in my head. It was right there in front of me, plain as day. My money was gone, again, and no one else had been here but him. That was the moment the fog in my head began to lift. I didn't feel old anymore. I didn't feel weak. I felt awake. Every small memory, every strange moment, every patronizing word he'd said started to line up like puzzle pieces. The pattern was clear now. He wasn't protecting me. He was bleeding me dry. He used my age as his cover, my love as his shield, and I had let him do it because I wanted to believe he was still my boy. But that night, something changed inside me. Love stepped aside and truth took its place. I thought about all the people who had stopped visiting, all the neighbors who had looked at me with pity. I thought about how he must have enjoyed it. Everyone treating him like the good son while I looked like a broken old fool. I thought about my wife again. I could almost hear her voice saying, "Stop letting him write your story." She was right. I had spent months living in a version of life he built for me, where I was the weak one, the confused one, the problem. But not anymore. That night I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't even move for a while. I just sat there and let the truth settle in. It was a heavy truth, but it felt solid, something I could finally stand on. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being deceived. And once you see a lie for what it is, you can't unsee it. I realized then that I had two choices: stay silent and let him keep winning, or stand up and remind him who raised him. I had spent a lifetime being patient, forgiving, and kind. But patience is not the same as blindness. I went to bed that night with a calm I hadn't felt in months. I didn't know exactly what I would do, but I knew I wouldn't stay silent anymore. He thought I was harmless. He thought I'd never fight back. That was his biggest mistake, because a man who's been made to doubt his own mind, once he regains his clarity, becomes dangerous. Not with fists or words, but with truth. And I finally had mine. The next morning, I woke up early. The house was still, the air heavy with the quiet of something about to change. I made my coffee, the same way I always did, but my hands didn't shake anymore. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to argue with him. I wasn't going to beg him to stop. I had done enough of that in my head. This time, I would show him. Not with words, but with proof. I went to my study, the only room he rarely entered unless he was looking for something valuable. On the shelf, between old books and dusty frames, I found what I needed: a small camera my grandson once gave me as a gift years ago. It was meant for family videos. I had never used it. But that day, it became my weapon. I tested it first, made sure it worked. The little red light blinked faintly, steady and patient, just like me. I found the perfect spot for it, high on the corner shelf between two thick books that no one had touched in years. The camera's eye faced the desk and the chair where I usually left my things. It could see everything. I sat down for a long while, looking around the room, making sure no detail was out of place. It had to look normal. That was important. My son was smart, careful, too used to having control. If he even suspected something had changed, he'd hide his steps better. So I made sure everything looked the same: the papers, the lamp, the calendar, even the small pile of mail he pretended to sort for me. When I finished setting it up, I placed my wallet right on the table, just like always. I counted the bills slowly, out loud, like I sometimes did when I was alone, enough to leave no doubt in my mind later. I left the right amount inside. Not too much, not too little. Just enough temptation to draw him in, the way a fisherman sets bait. Then I closed the wallet carefully, left it open enough to be noticed, and sat in silence. It felt strange, preparing a trap for my own son. My hands were steady, but my heart ached. I didn't want to catch him. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to discover that I'd been mistaken all along. But deep down, I knew better. For hours I waited. I didn't move much. I wanted him to come when the house felt calm, predictable. He liked patterns. He liked control. He'd stop by, say he was checking on me, pretend to tidy things. That was his routine. I let the day pass naturally. I watched the clock, watered the plants, read the same newspaper 3 times to keep myself occupied. When evening came, I turned off the study light and left the room, making sure the wallet stayed visible in the faint glow from the hallway. I walked slowly to my chair in the living room and sat down. I didn't need to see him do it. The camera would see for me. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness, that was gone, but the peace that comes when you finally decide to stop being a victim. I wasn't the weak old man he made me out to be. I was still a father, still a man who understood right from wrong, and I was ready to take back what he had stolen. Not just the money, but my dignity, my truth, my name. The house was quiet that night, too quiet. I could hear every creak, every step, every breath. Somewhere in that silence, I found a strange kind of strength. He thought he knew me. He thought I was finished. But tomorrow, the truth would speak, not through me, but through the little red light waiting in the corner of the room. He came the next afternoon, just like I knew he would. The sound of his car pulling into the driveway was the same as always. A little too fast, a little too confident. He walked in without knocking, calling out my name in that cheerful tone he used when he wanted to sound caring. I answered like I always did, calm and steady, pretending nothing was different. My heart was beating slow, but heavy, like it knew something final was about to happen. He walked around the house, checking things he didn't need to check, pretending to tidy papers, moving objects just to make it look like he was helping. Then he walked toward the study. My pulse tightened, but I stayed seated. This time, I didn't follow him. I let him go alone. The camera was already watching, hidden, silent, loyal. He stepped into the study the same way he always did, like it belonged to him. He looked around once, just a quick scan of the room, then his eyes went to the wallet. I could imagine the exact thought crossing his mind. He'd taken money before. He thought this would be no different. He walked closer, slow but sure, like a man returning to a habit he'd already mastered. He glanced toward the doorway to make sure I wasn't there, then picked up the wallet. I could almost hear the faint sound of the leather opening. He counted the bills with his fingers, smooth, casual, like someone who had done it 100 times before. He smiled. That was the part that burned when I later watched the recording. He smiled while stealing from his own father. It wasn't nervous or guilty. It was calm, satisfied, like he was proud of himself. He slipped the money into his pocket, closed the wallet, and placed it back in the exact same spot. The precision told me everything. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't an accident. This was habit. He'd been doing it for a long time, and he was good at it. Too good. He straightened the papers on the desk, looked around one more time, and left the room. All of it, every second, every gesture, every quiet betrayal, captured by that small blinking light between the books. When he came back into the living room, he smiled at me again. "You doing okay, Dad?" he asked. His tone was smooth, soft, sweet as poison. I nodded and said yes. I looked right into his eyes and said yes. And in that small moment, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't the victim anymore. He was. He just didn't know it yet. He sat down and talked for a while, pretending everything was fine, pretending he cared. I nodded, listened, answered. But all the while, I knew that the truth was sitting on a memory card in the corner of that study. When he left that evening, he kissed my head like he always did. It used to mean love. Now it meant nothing. I waited until I heard the sound of his car fade down the street. Then I went to the study. My hands didn't tremble when I reached for the camera. I took it out, pressed stop, and stared at it for a long time. That little device had seen what I had lived through for months, the lies, the theft, the manipulation. But now it had something I never did before, proof, undeniable, clear, and merciless. I sat down in the chair and played the recording. I watched every second. The look in his eyes, the calmness of his movements, the way he checked the hallway before taking what wasn't his. It all burned into me. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just watched. I had imagined this moment 100 times, but the reality of it felt heavier. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about what he had turned into, what I had let him become. My own blood, my own boy, stealing from me and smiling while doing it. That image would never leave me. But I wasn't broken anymore. I was ready. Tomorrow the truth would leave this house. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my chair with the camera in my lap, watching the streetlights blink through the curtains. The proof was in my hands, small but powerful. For months he had told everyone I was losing my mind. He made me question myself, made me small in front of others, made me feel like a shadow in my own home. But now I held something stronger than all his lies. The truth. I could have confronted him right then, shouted in his face, demanded answers. But I didn't. That would have been too easy for him. He was clever. He would have twisted my words, cried, said I misunderstood. He'd make me look like the confused old man again. This time I would do it differently. Quiet, clean, final. The next morning, I copied the video to my computer. My hands moved steady, calm, deliberate. I watched the clip one last time before sending it. It hurt to see it, but it also gave me strength. He couldn't lie his way out of what the camera saw. He couldn't talk over the truth. I wrote one simple line in the email. He said I was losing my mind. Watch this and decide who really is. Then I attached the file. I didn't send it to him. I sent it to his boss. The same man he'd always bragged about impressing. The one who believed my son was the picture of honesty. I hit send, and the little icon spun for a few seconds before disappearing. It was done. The truth was no longer trapped in this house. I didn't move for a long time after that. The house felt heavier, but quieter. The kind of quiet that follows a storm you've waited too long to face. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't worried about what would happen next. I had spent too long carrying the weight of his lies. Now, it was his turn to carry something. The truth. I made some tea and sat by the window, looking at the sky. It was gray, calm, still. I thought about how strange it was, to feel peace while knowing your own son's life was about to fall apart. But peace doesn't always come from happiness. Sometimes it comes from justice. When the evening came, I imagined him at that office party he had told me about, laughing, shaking hands, pretending to be the perfect man. I imagined his phone buzzing in his pocket, the boss checking his inbox, playing the video, the sound of silence falling over the room. I pictured the look on his face when he realized what had happened, the smile fading, the color draining from his skin, the weight of the truth finally pressing down on him. For months, he made me look like a fool. Now the mirror was turned on him. Everyone would see what I saw. Not a caring son, not a responsible man, but a thief hiding behind a false smile. When the night grew darker, I turned off the lights and sat quietly, waiting for the world to catch up to what I already knew. My son had spent so long controlling the story, but stories have a way of flipping when the truth finally steps in. I didn't hate him. I didn't wish him pain. I just wanted him to feel what I had felt. The helplessness, the humiliation, the silence. I wanted him to know that even the old man he thought was fading could still stand, could still fight, could still make the truth louder than lies. And as I sat there, I whispered to myself, almost like a prayer, "Now it's your turn, son. Let's see how you handle being the one no one believes." By morning, it was over. I didn't need a phone call to know. I could feel it. The air was different, still, heavy, final. Around 9 o'clock, his car pulled into the driveway, but it didn't stay long. He didn't come inside. He just sat there for a few minutes, engine running, before driving off again. That was the first sign. The second came an hour later, when one of his co-workers called the house. The man sounded nervous, didn't say much, just asked if I had spoken to him yet. I told him no. He sighed, said something about a situation at the office, and hung up. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what had happened. The video had done its job. Later that day, I went out to get the mail. The neighbors looked at me differently, not with pity this time, with quiet curiosity. They had heard something. News travels fast in small places. I saw it in their eyes, the same way I once saw disbelief when my son told them I was losing my mind. But this time, the disbelief wasn't pointed at me. It was pointed at him. They didn't know all the details, but they knew enough. Something had changed. I could feel the shift. The story he built was falling apart piece by piece. The truth had cracked through the surface, and there was no putting it back. By evening, I got a short message from him. No apology, no explanation. Just 3 words. You ruined me. I stared at the screen for a long time. Ruined him? Number. He had done that himself. I had only stopped pretending not to see it. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. For months, he'd made me feel small, helpless, invisible. Now it was his turn to live in the silence he once gave me. His office must have been quiet that day, the kind of quiet that comes when everyone knows your secret, the kind that follows shame. He had always cared about his image more than anything. To lose that, to have people see him for what he truly was, that would hurt more than any words I could ever say. I didn't celebrate. There was no joy in it. Watching your own child fall isn't victory. It's loss, in a different shape. I had spent my life building him up, teaching him right from wrong, giving him everything I had. And now, to see it all undone by his own greed, it hollowed me out. But I didn't regret it. The truth had to come out, even if it hurt. Because sometimes justice doesn't look like triumph. Sometimes it looks like silence after a storm, when everything is broken but clean. The next few days were quiet. No visits, no calls. His desk was empty, his name removed from the company website. He vanished from social media, from public life, from the story he once owned. The same people who once praised him now avoided his name. It was like he had been erased. I heard that he tried to explain himself, said it was a misunderstanding, said I was framing him out of confusion, but it didn't work. The video didn't lie. The same truth he once twisted to make me look weak had become his undoing. And in the silence that followed, something strange happened. The rumors about me disappeared too. No one mentioned the old man losing his mind anymore. That story was gone, replaced by quiet respect. They still didn't say much, but their eyes were different now. Not pity, not doubt, just understanding. The lie had died, and with it, the version of me he had created. I was myself again, not the confused father, not the burden, not the shadow, just a man who finally got his truth back, no matter the cost. The days that followed felt different, quieter, but not empty. When I walked outside now, the neighbors greeted me again. They said good morning, looked me in the eye, smiled with a kind of respect I hadn't seen in months. They didn't mention what happened. They didn't need to. Their silence was their apology. I could feel the change in the air. The pity was gone. The whispers had stopped. For so long, I had been treated like a ghost, like an old man fading into confusion. Now, I was seen again. Not as the man who had lost his mind, but as the man who had kept it, even when everyone else chose to believe a lie. I walked to the store one afternoon, something I hadn't done alone in a long time. The cashier, who used to speak slowly to me as if I couldn't understand, now spoke to me like an equal. She asked how I'd been, and when I said better, she nodded softly. I could tell she knew. Everyone knew. Word travels fast, and truth moves quietly but surely. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. I had nothing left to prove. The same people who once doubted me now avoided talking about what they believed before. That was their shame to carry, not mine. I had carried enough already. Sometimes I'd see my son's car parked down the street, engine off, windows rolled up. He never came to the door. Maybe he wanted to. Maybe he couldn't. I didn't wave. I didn't move toward him. I just stood there for a moment, watching from the porch, then went back inside. There was nothing left to say between us. The man who had spent months making me question myself now had to live with everyone questioning him. That was the reversal. Not revenge, not punishment, just balance. Life has a way of turning the mirror around when the time is right. Inside the house, everything felt lighter. The air didn't feel heavy anymore. I started cleaning, opening windows, letting the sunlight in. The rooms didn't feel like prisons now. They felt like my home again. I began writing small notes in a notebook, not to keep track of my memory anymore, but to remember moments of truth. I am still clear. I am still here. He couldn't take that from me. They were simple words, but they felt powerful. They reminded me that I had survived not because I was strong, but because I stayed patient long enough for the truth to show itself. The world around me slowly adjusted. People stopped treating me like a fragile thing. Some offered small kindnesses, a ride to the store, help with the trash, but it was different now, not out of pity, but respect. They saw me as capable again, human again. And I realized something I hadn't understood before. Sometimes the hardest fight isn't proving others wrong. It's holding on to what you know is true when everyone tells you it's not. I had done that. Barely, painfully, but I had done it. Now, when I looked at my reflection, I didn't see an old man falling apart. I saw someone who had been broken down and rebuilt quietly, piece by piece. I saw a father who had loved too much, trusted too much, but still stood in the end. People would talk, they always do. But the story had changed. I wasn't the man who forgot things anymore. I was the man who remembered too well, remembered the lies, the looks, the loneliness, and still managed to come out with his truth intact. The pity that once filled every glance was gone. In its place was something I hadn't felt in years: dignity. The world now saw what I had known all along. I hadn't been losing my mind. I had been losing patience. And when patience finally ran out, the truth finally came through. Now the house is quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet it used to be. It's peaceful now. Not heavy, not suffocating, just still. I sit by the window most mornings with my tea, watching the street wake up. Children running to school, neighbors sweeping porches, cars moving slowly through the early light. Life goes on, and I sit there, calm, not angry, not sad, just thinking. The storm has passed, but its memory stays. I think about my son. I think about how love can blind a man, how trust can turn into a weapon when placed in the wrong hands. I gave him everything I had, and he used it to try and make me disappear. He wanted me small. He wanted me silent. He wanted the world to believe I was gone long before I ever left. But I didn't vanish. I was still here, waiting, watching, remembering. Some nights I replay the past in my head, not the pain, but the lessons. I've learned that lies can sound like love if you hear them often enough. I've learned that manipulation doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it comes with a soft voice saying, "Don't worry." I've learned that the people closest to you can destroy your peace one word at a time if you let them. But most of all, I've learned the truth doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to survive long enough to be seen. That's what I did. I survived. Even when he made me doubt myself, even when the world turned its back on me, even when I felt like nothing I said mattered, I held on to what I knew inside. That small piece of clarity saved me. I see him sometimes. He drives by slowly, never gets out of the car. Maybe he's ashamed, maybe he's angry, maybe both. I don't feel hatred toward him anymore. Hatred is heavy, and I've carried enough weight already. I just feel tired. Tired in a quiet way. I wish things had been different. I wish he had chosen honesty instead of greed. I wish he had remembered who raised him, who fed him, who taught him right from wrong. But wishes don't change the past. All I can do now is sit here and breathe in the calm that truth brought back into my life. Sometimes I think about the people who once believed his stories. They look at me now with regret. Some apologize, some don't. It doesn't matter. I'm not waiting for their words. I got something better. Peace. The kind that doesn't depend on others believing me. The kind that comes from knowing I was never what they said I was. I wasn't losing my mind. I was losing my patience. And maybe that was what needed to happen. Because when patience runs out, action begins. And action is what saved me. I don't keep the video anymore. I deleted it after a while. I didn't need it. Proof served its purpose. The truth had already done its work. My son's life changed, my reputation returned, and the balance was restored. What remained was quiet, the kind that hums in the background of an old man's days. I look out the window and think, not of revenge, but of peace. He tried to make me look insane. Now he's the one explaining himself to everyone. Life has a way of doing that, turning the lies people build into mirrors they can't escape. And I, the man everyone thought was fading, sit here in the sunlight, alive, clear, and free.